Welcome to the Community Championship podcast, hosted by me, Matthew Williams, Tournament Director for the Community Championship.
It's the biggest sporting event in Aramco history, with over 5,000 participants competing in over 90 events and over 50 nationalities showcasing 20 sports. The Community Championship. The opening ceremony for the finals is happening in Dhahran on the 26th of March from 9 a.m. With live music and entertainment, food stalls from around the world, and fun activities for children and the community. See you there.
Today I'm joined by Stephen Light, CEO of People Active, leadership expert, executive coach, and team relationship coach. As well as being a professional referee, Stephen will be discussing and sharing what it takes to be a high-performing team and the characteristics needed to become a good leader. This episode is going to blow you away. So Stephen, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. We're going to dive straight in. So with your extensive knowledge, do you think confidence is contagious?
Matt, in my experience working with high professional sportsmen, business leaders, absolutely. Confidence, people love to be around confident people, confident leaders, and it does spread a lot of contagiousness within people, within groups, within teams. So people look and lean into confidence and confident leaders, absolutely.
So the role of confidence within leadership, elaborate on that for me.
So we're working with some senior leaders, and I can immediately identify those leaders who have taken a path through. They've been very skilled at what they do. They're pretty good, and they've been promoted. They lack some skills around leading people, and the confidence that shows up in those situations, you can see it's missing. There is something about the way they show up, the way they present themselves, how they handle challenging situations. They lean into people. They're confident in who they are. Whereas there are leaders, who have huge confidence. They are people-oriented. They know what they're about. And whether they know what to do in terms of difficult situations or not, they lean into who they are, and they know their people will help them solve it.
So are there any steps or characteristics that you believe develop confidence as a leader?
Oh, absolutely. And so straight off the bat, you can develop your confidence. I absolutely know that. I look at myself, personal journey. I used to be very shy, very intimidated by people. I've grown my confidence. And I've got a confidence model that I've worked out now. I use with leaders. And when I coach individuals and work with teams, there are 5 components to confidence that you can work on. Most people tend to lean into the one area, which is around knowledge. They think, if I know what I'm doing, I'm going to be confident. And yet there are situations that knock them back. There is like knowledge, there is having experience, there's things like self-belief, there's things like your self-love, your value for yourself, and then validation, that external and internal validation. For me, those are like 5 key components. If you can work on those, you can grow your confidence.
Wow. So when you're working with these high performance teams, are there certain behaviors or characteristics that you are seeing turn up time and time again from these teams that are performing at the highest level?
Yeah, there's definitely, if I think about like in a corporate sense, working with teams, there are invariably between 3 and 5 key issues that are common across all of them that show up. They don't communicate well. They don't lean into conflict. They're not clear around who's doing what, the expectations. They haven't got clarity. And so the ones that are more confident, they are able to put their own personal desires and what they're trying to achieve, like the spotlight on them, they're able to put it aside, focus on team outcomes. They realize who they are and what they want is not diminished by what the team is actually trying to do. So they lean into what the team's trying to achieve and they focus on that. By the way, that promotes them as well.
Wow. So obviously we have professional you in many capacities, and one is obviously from a referee in a rugby scenario. What are the kind of transferables that you're taking onto pitch that you can also transfer off pitch within some of these scenarios regarding performance or game flow, etc.?
So I'm going to look back. I'm a little bit older now on my refereeing days, but now I work with high-performing referees. And you can see those referees who are very confident and the ones who aren't. And skill is only one part of it. how they manage that scenario, that situation as they're dealing with a range of personalities. That's really important. And the confident ones know that they don't always have to have the right answer, but they can make a decision and they can own it based on their knowledge. And they're not going to be knocked or pushed aside by the fact that they've made a decision, whether it's right or wrong. So in my experience, high performance referees actually are so much more focused in their preparation and establishing what they're trying to achieve. Think about a game as a meeting. They are so much more focused in their preparation and who they're going to work with, what they're trying to achieve, than what a leader would do prepping for a meeting. And so that skill is hugely transferable. How well did I do in my last performance? What did I do really well that I want to continue? What were my work-ons that I need to improve on? And how am I going to do that as I show up on the pitch today? How am I going to lean into my team of 3, team of 4, who are going to help me achieve what I'm trying to achieve, whilst I allow this game to unfold and flow? So if you think about some of those skills, not just your knowledge, but the experience, every game I'm learning, I'm challenging myself, the self-belief around who I am as a person, that I know what I'm doing. And if I make a mistake, I'll be okay. I can pick up and move. They value who they are as people. So they will not allow other rugby players to speak down to them, to try and intimidate them. They hold their ground. They know who they are. And when they do something wrong, they'll listen, take feedback, adjust. So they might have a halftime meeting with their individuals or their team of 3 and learn from what's going on, adjust for the second half. Take those skills and apply them in a work environment. How well do you prep for your meetings? Whether it's having difficult conversations, it's running a board meeting. Do you know the players that are involved? Do you know the personalities? What can you expect? What's going to push you down the avenue you don't want? And how will you challenge that? Have you assessed how your last meeting ran? What did you do well? What do you need to raise your game? Do you ask for regular feedback? I think people in business tend to shy away from feedback. Referees cannot escape it.
Yeah, so for me, it was just the transfer really from the knowledge base maybe as a referee and some of the challenges that you might experience within that environment that could be taken into the work environment, or vice versa, things that might have happened within the work environment where when you're managing a game on a Saturday, you think, okay, actually, I can use these skills to be able to change or influence the outcome.
Yeah, it's such a challenging one. There is the field of neuroscience that points you towards. David Rock in the field of neuroscience has done a whole lot of work around how people show up in different situations. And what he identified as 5 social domains that every situation our brain is assessing us against. The key one here is status. How do I measure up to other people? And as soon as someone hears, can I give you some feedback? Their brain interprets it as a threat. So they shut down. They don't want to hear it. So by nature, as human beings, we don't like to know that we're doing something wrong, because what we have done through our lives is we have compressed who we are and what we do into the same thing. And they're very different. Who you are, the individual, your birthright, you have inherent value and skills to give to the world. What you do is a behavior. Oh, I did something wrong. Thanks for the feedback. I can change. People need to pull those two apart so they can receive feedback. And because, in my experience in workplaces and in leadership roles, it's very difficult to hear, hey, I'm a leader of a team, leader of an organization, and I'm off track. I'm not doing what's required. That's very hard to hear. Whereas in a referee situation, referees, you don't listen to feedback, you don't improve, you don't progress.
Let's take that major word that we talk about in sport and building within characteristics of trust. Where does that sit in a team and an organization for you?
How deep do we go? So trust is such a big topic. There is a guy, Charles Green, back in the 70s. He designed what we call the trust equation. And he broke trust into various components. So he talks about, and then if you think about who do I trust and why, it's quite a deep question. I trust this person, but I don't trust that person. And so he looks at trust from a reliability perspective. Do you do what you say you will do? That's one of the key things. And a lot of people look at trust and think, well, I don't trust that person, but I'm not quite sure why. Well, they keep letting you down. You don't trust them. They're not trustworthy. He talks about your credibility. Do you know what you are doing? And then the other one is, are you about yourself or are you about other people? Do you genuinely care about other people? And so he has this equation that you can work out how much you trust individuals. So trust is such a big issue. Now, in a professional sporting environment, when you talk about trying to deliver outcomes that are consistent, they're credible, they're going to help you progress, you have to sometimes lean into your team of four who are going to make decisions that you've got to trust in the moment to go with it, and it's not going to affect your career. And as a referee, that's a very difficult place to get to. And so we look at like teams of four that referee various, so whether it's international level or kind of local level, you might be working with a different team of four. And how do you set up trust with that team so that you can lean into each other? I think one of the key things here is the more you know people, the easier it is to trust them. The less you know people, the harder it is to accept some of the things that they're going to tell you and decisions that they make. But trust, for me, in a relationship is huge.
So let's dive into specifics if we've got them. Qualities of a high-performing team. What are they?
Okay, so here's one key one. You've got people in roles, and roles belong to an organization, but people fulfill those roles. You leave that organization, the role still stays. Now, a leader gets appointed to the role like a CEO of an organization. It's an individual, a human being occupying that role. That doesn't mean that leader has to take all responsibility for every decision that has to be made. It's the people in the organization and that team that can help. So leadership is everyone's responsibility. That's a key quality. And leaders who get that and are able to let go of controlling everything and allow their people to help make decisions, that is one of the key qualities in high-performing teams. Another one, there is implicit trust, where people are able to be vulnerable. They can lean into each other. They're not about protecting their backs and being careful about what they say and who they speak to. When we have a trust in a team, people are able to be vulnerable, ask for help, admit when they got stuff wrong. That allows teams who have a lot of trust to then work well with conflict. Think about how many teams, whether it's in a professional working environment or in a sporting environment, where there is teams who don't trust each other, they don't deal with conflict very well. So conflict, teams who have trust can lean into conflict. They realize conflict's in service of driving better outcomes, making us better. They navigate difficult situations by leaning into it and trusting each other. So that then allows them to tap into some of the inherent things like their values, driving commitment. So people make absolute commitments to each other. They are accountable for it. And then that drives the attention to team results, not individual results. So those are some of the key qualities I see showing up in teams.
So on a personal level, what kind of value do you place on sport and what do you think it can teach like young people?
So sports, whether it's an individual or team, helps people become a lot more confident because as you practice something, and I'm a big believer in it's practice, 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 and perfect practice makes perfect. So the more you are diving into something, practicing something, the better you get at it. The better you get at something, the more experience you have, it boosts your confidence. So sport, whether individual or team, has a huge role to play in helping people feel better about themselves, connect more in terms of community, and then obviously make a bigger impact into communities. Huge input in terms of growing your confidence.
With the discussion so far, I'm gauging that leadership is something that obviously you can improve on and something that you can get better at. If you were to take it back to children, my question to you from a coach's point of view is, we sometimes perceive that people are born leaders. Is that something that you believe in? Is somebody have those characteristics naturally, or do you think that's something they've been able to adapt over time? But especially within children in sport, I'd be really interested to see how you think leadership comes about.
Yeah, sport can tend to skew people towards being the best, number one. It's competition based, so it's about winning. And not everyone's going to win, which means people are going to feel a little bit less than. If anything that I would help kids develop is a greater sense of self-belief, because no matter what they face, they will then feel confident. Whether they're succeeding or failing, they'll be able to interpret failing as a learning. So self-belief for me is the solution to everything. The more you believe in who you are and accept who you are, you can navigate and face anything. Teach kids in sport. Sport plays a huge role in kids starting to understand who they are, connecting more with people. take out this whole element of judging. That's why in younger kids' sports, it shouldn't be so much about winning, and it should be about who you are as an individual and then helping them grow that self-belief. That's important for me with young kids.
Can I dig a little bit deeper on that? Can I try and work out from what you're saying to listeners, parents, and young children, like how do you go about building a framework to increase someone's self-belief?
Okay, so what is self-belief? It's trusting that no matter what I face, I will be okay. So there is something about reframing sport, not about winning, but about learning about yourself. So if a child plays a game of rugby or football and they lose and they're feeling down, it's framing it in the sense of, what was really good about that game and what can you learn about that loss, and helping those children sip and the fact that they lost is that, wow, you can learn from that and you can get better, but the loss doesn't diminish who you are. Really helping kids understand that they are separate from that and that they are a whole human being. No matter what they experience in life, they will still be whole. That's your birthright. And that value never diminishes based on how you experience things. I would really unpack those two things for kids. And that's how I would build up that self-belief. There are a lot of little other things you can do with kids, and I'll give a personal one. I had a list of about 4 or 5 affirmations that we used to read to our twin daughters every night when they were going to bed. And then they would repeat them back to us. Things like, I treat people the way I want to be treated. I'm a beautiful piece of God, whatever God means for you. Things that help them believe in themselves and feel positive about themselves. And that helped them build self-esteem and self-belief.
Where did that come from? Where did the idea come about, the idea to read them the affirmations?
Rightly or wrongly, we gave our girls a voice from a very young age. So they are like well-spoken, independent. Let me tell you, I get away with nothing. They're 20 now. And so we decided at a very young age, because my wife and I are both in coaching, we both work in the space of helping people realize who they are and their potential. And so we decided when they were at a very young age that we wanted to help grow their self-belief. I grew up in my background where it was like children should be seen and not heard. You behave yourself or else you're going to get a club. And so we decided to really validate our kids and give them that kind of step up from an emotional maturity perspective and start believing in themselves. And based on the work that I was doing and understanding self-esteem and what it's about, what I would do is I drafted these, and my wife and I, we went through them and we agreed, okay, that's what we want to work with them. So we would stick it up on the toilet door, stick it up on the mirror, stick it up in their bedroom, and then every night we would read it to them. So they had constant reminders of these affirmations. And if I went and asked them now, they'd be able to tell me them. That's how often we did it with them.
Wow. So walk me through your journey then, because you initially said that you maybe weren't as confident as a young man as you are now in your field of work. So let's kind of strip it back and kind of work out, what was Stephen like at school, this child that was meant to be seen but not heard and didn't have affirmations, to being now this kind of well-rounded parent that's inspiring these 20-year-old girls to know these affirmations. Let's have a little look and a walkthrough of your journey.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. So firstly, my daughters would challenge that well-rounded parent. They would challenge that. But having said that, so I grew up in an environment where broken home, parents divorced. And so we had very little self-belief, very little self-esteem, and our voice didn't really count for anything. And so with that came this huge sense of insecurity about who we were and how we're supposed to show up in the world. What that meant is I would either shy away from stuff or I was the class clown, making jokes so people wouldn't see how much or how little I valued who I was as an individual. Constantly looking for validation and affirmation from people outside of me, from situations. And so like my brother, he would be the one that would cause chaos and get expelled from school. Whereas I channeled my affirmation into achieving and trying to get great results. And so that's how I showed up. And through stepping into that, I then got married and realized, geez, there is a whole lot of stuff that I'm struggling with, and spent a good part of 7 years in therapy, unpacking and unwinding a lot of that stuff. And that was running parallel with my journey into the world of coaching and running leadership. And so that started melding together. And I think if I pinpointed one of the biggest things that impacted me fully embracing and accepting who I am was listening to some of the voices like Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, Marianne Williamson, some of these people who are into the spiritual space, but also have a very practical edge to what they do. That informed a lot of who I am and helped me define my purpose. And that gave me a lot of confidence. So you could see this journey from like this shy little kid into this class clown, into this hey, I've addressed my stuff and I'm dealing with it and I'm human and I'm flawed, but I accept it, through to this okay, now I'm really confident about who I am. And so stretched into coaching and team coaching and leadership and things like that.
And then let's cast it forward, right? Because where are we going now? What's the plan with this? Because obviously it's like, Stephen 2.0. Where's the next plan? Because obviously I would imagine with working with high performance teams, it can be very rewarding from a success point of view. You're working with people that are achieving and getting better. So is that the thought process for the next 5-10 years? What's the plan?
Yeah. So Matt, my purpose is shine a light in service of humanity. I want to have an impact on humanity. And how I do that is one conversation at a time. So whether it's with an individual coaching them or whether it's with a team or an organization, I want to have that impact. And so a trained team coach, a master coach with the ICF, and I design and run leadership programs globally. So of course, for the next 5 to 10 years, my goal is to work with teams who genuinely want to make a difference. And I want to stretch into that and help them really look deep as to what's going on in them, bring your individual voice to that, and then start shining. So that's my one big goal. The other is I mentor individuals in terms of helping them grow. I'm currently working with a couple of individuals, mentoring them so that they can then pick up their beacon, realize their potential, and get out there and ripple that effect in terms of making humanity better. This world is so polarized at the moment. And if I can have one conversation that helps one relationship become less polarized, I'm making a difference.
So we've done the positive journey. We've done your life story. That is great. And I love this idea of, passing on the beacon, very Olympic, that sits well within a sports podcast, right? So that's great. Let's go into some of the, I suppose, dysfunction elements of a team. And I know that you kind of have 5 that you're kind of key on, and you've highlighted a couple, but could we just get what those 5 kind of dysfunctions that you see within team environment?
Yeah, and so research by Patrick Lencioni on teams has revealed that, and he's got a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So he reveals, and again, leaning into those key qualities, is like trust. So one of the key dysfunctions is teams who don't trust each other. It's like transactional. It's like get through the day. And we call that the kind of 9 to 5 hands and feet culture, where it's come in, do the least possible, get my salary, duck out. Don't expect me to give you discretionary effort. I don't trust this organization. It's all about the numbers, all about the organization. What's in it for me? And so people kind of self-protect, no trust. What that means is when it comes to conflict, I'm going to avoid it, or I'm going to attack people. I'm going to shy away from it, because you know what? Conflict is not something that's going to help us grow, because it's a very dysfunctional team. That means in terms of values, and this is what I see a lot in organizations, we've got these great values to drive commitment. We've done big activities. In fact, the senior leaders in the business went away for 2 days, brought back the kind of 3 key values, put them up on the wall, told us what they are, told us to live these values. I have no connection to them. I'm not going to live those values. Don't expect me to commit to that. So I see values just don't live. And it's one of the big dysfunctions. People don't commit. And as a result, accountability, what I'm going to do is pass the buck around. I'm not going to take accountability, and I'm going to have lots of excuses, and I'm going to blame someone else because something hasn't been done. And that ultimately, all of those dysfunctions lead to the key one is that results just don't happen. Deadlines are missed. People are all focused on themselves, trying to get ahead, looking to leave because the culture becomes a little bit toxic. And so the actual skills that entered into a culture end up exiting and moving on to a space where they can thrive.
For me, I know from working within different teams within different spaces, I always put one of the fundamental challenges as communication issues, especially across big organizations or sporting clubs. So do you have any strategies that you think that you could put forward to make communication better within teams?
Yeah, 2 key things. Listen and ask questions. And Here's what our brain does. Because our brain is a certainty creating machine, it wants to know the facts, the answer. And when it doesn't have the facts, because we're not master communicators, we don't listen very well. We think we do, but we don't. Mostly we listen for what we want to hear. So we don't listen well. We don't ask great questions. So we make a lot of assumptions. And a lot of the time, those assumptions are based on what we think, not on what actually is being communicated. So if you want to improve communication, get better at listening to people, genuinely getting over there. What are they asking? What are they saying? What are they not saying? What am I observing? How is it impacting me? When you really listen to what people are asking you, it'll inform your question. And then questions should be open questions, short, sharp, to the point, so that you genuinely understand people. There's that principle that St. Francis of Assisi, he introduced it. Covey used it as one of its 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand, then be understood. And I think people want to be understood before they want to understand. And if you want to get better at communicating, whether it's in sport, whether it's in the workplace, ask questions and listen. That will take you a long way to being a better communicator.
Wow. So last question then, no pressure on this one. If you could pass on a lesson to improve someone else's life, what would it be, Stephen?
Let me look back at myself when I was like 10, 11. And what would I say? It's like, just believe in yourself. Trust yourself. Trust life. Trust the process. No matter what you go through, you are going to be okay. Reach out. You are not alone in this world. And if that's one of the things I've picked up, is that the more I reach out and ask for help, people want to help you. People love vulnerability. It's the last thing they want you to see in them, but it's the first thing they want to see in you because it creates connection. So be vulnerable, ask for help, believe in yourself. That, for me, you get that right, I promise you will build such strong relationships in your life. It's going to take you where you need to get to.
Stephen, for me, I think I've been blown away. Honestly, the way that you come over, the knowledge base that you have, the whole conversation, I think is massively inspiring. It's enlightening, I think, for some people. I think this understanding of passing the buck and I think showing vulnerability in sport is something that we're all getting better at doing. And I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, coming from a ex-professional rugby point of view, to show you are vulnerable was something that was never, ever considered. And I think to finish with that as an answer, that to show vulnerability is the beginning of new framework is amazing. So just from me and everybody listening, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome, Matt. Thanks for the conversation.
And thank you for listening to this episode. The Community Championship is the biggest sporting event in Aramco history. The opening ceremony for the finals is happening in Central Camp on the 26th of March from 9 a.m. Showcasing the finals of junior touch rugby and the 10K. With live music and entertainment, food stalls from around the world, and fun activities for children to get involved in. We look forward to seeing you. Keep listening for the next episode of the Community Championship podcast.